And good evening again, and welcome. For the last few weeks and the next few weeks, we have been and will continue to talk about breathing meditation. It's obviously what that guided meditation was about. So, uh, what I want to do this evening is start by just unpacking a little bit what we just did in that guided meditation. And then I will talk about the Anapanasati Sutta, which is one of the main Buddhist teachings on breathing meditation. So, first off, did you all get a little taste of relaxation, a taste of breathing in that? Yeah. Hopefully a little taste of that pleasant feeling. Did you all get that? Yeah. And impermanence, taste of impermanence and ungraspability. Yeah. Okay. Good. So what we were doing broadly is stepping through the first two tetrads of four tetrads, which is groups of four steps. So there's 16 steps in the Anapanasati Sutta, broken into four steps of four. Broadly, we were stepping through the first two of those. Played around with it a little bit at the end, and brought in some of the stuff that happens later. But as I talk about this today, hopefully the reason I was doing that and the way that that was happening will make sense. So what we did, we started off just with a little bit of grounding and settling. What I would normally do, most of you know this, but what I would normally do is take us on a progressive body relaxation from the top of the head on down, intentionally relaxing as we go down, dropping energy. I did not do that. I just did a very basic settling and grounding because the first couple of steps of the Anapanasati are designed to do that anyway. The first two steps read just breathing in. I know that I'm breathing in long and short, in and out, respectively. And just that knowing naturally brings a settling into the body, what it's designed to do. And then the next two steps are exploring the body and calming the body. And as I've talked about in previous weeks, the word that's used for breath, prana, does not just mean air moving in and out of the lungs. It's got an energy valence. It's like qi in Chinese or in China. It's like ruach in the Judeo-Christian traditions. It's spirit. It's the breath of life. It's more than just air moving in and out of the lungs. So it animates the whole body. This knowing the breath, knowing the body are the same thing, really. They're just not separable. So that's what we were doing there, is exploring this interpenetration of breath and body, this inseparability of breath and body, exploring, getting to know that itself built and sustained concentration, caused deeper settling, allowed us to move into calming. Then we moved into four steps that are around what in this text is in the Anapanasati Sutta is Chitta Shankara, which are fabrications of the mind. Broadly, it means feelings, but the word for feeling tones is Vedana, which means pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. It's not what this is. So there's a subtlety here and an overlap. So where that takes us as the body settles, it opens up and naturally pleasant feelings arise. And initially, those pleasant feelings can be quite strong. So the Anapanasati moves from the first two steps, where it's breathing in long, I know that I'm breathing in long, breathing out long, I know that I'm breathing out long, short, to breathing in, I train myself to experience the body. Breathing out, I train myself. Breathing in, I train myself to calm the body. So there's a shift from knowing to training, and that training persists, which is why we shifted from just noticing the qualities of the breath to intentionally moving the breath, intentionally finding pleasant spaces and seeing if we can play with those and expand them. And then later, seeing if there's unpleasant places arise and seeing if we can do something to work with those without tightening up around them, staying grounded, staying relaxed, which is really important. If we tighten up, it's already over. Stay relaxed. Seeing if staying relaxed, we can work with this breath energy to bring calm, to bring peace. As we do so, this energy that we noticed starts to settle. This pleasant feeling starts to become more subtle. Throughout this, I kept bringing us back to noticing impermanence. We really tried to bring that out at the end. Impermanence of these feelings. It's totally ungraspable. Totally ungraspable. And then the breath itself. What we think of as the breath isn't really a solid thing we can call the breath. Show me your breath. Go and hold it out. You can't, right? Air goes in from here. And then it goes back out here. Where is it? Immediately, the gas that we breathe in moves into the blood and gets moved around the body. And other gas is released. Where is this breath? And this sensation, what and where really is this sensation? Utterly mysterious. So that's what we were doing. And I'll want to do some discussion around the sutra and then circle back to close with talking about those practice elements. So the sutta, the Anapanasati Sutta, the commentarial tradition tells us that this is what the Buddha was practicing the night he awoke. This breathing in, breathing out, this mindfulness of breathing in and breathing out. It's actually his practice. And there are a lot of meditation practices in the Pali Canon, and there are a lot more in later traditions as well. But it is certainly one of the central meditation techniques, if not the main meditation technique. It shows up in a number of different places, in a number of different suttas in the Pali Canon. The Anapanasati Sutra is where it shows up most robustly, most coherently, most completely. So that's why this is a sutta that's particularly attended to. The Anapanasati and the Satipatthana Sutta, which is the four foundations of mindfulness, they overlap. And I'll talk about how one of the ways they overlap in a minute. So they're often discussed together because they overlap. I'll tell you how they overlap right now. So the Satipatthana Sutta begins with basically the first tetrad, which I just went through. That's how it starts. And then it moves on into being mindful in the body. And you're mindful in the body when you walk, when you sit, when you stand, when you lie down. You're mindful in the body when you're in a charnel ground and you're looking at corpses, when you're looking at corpses decaying. When you're considering this and you're recognizing this is like got hair, skin, teeth, bones, it's full of pus, full of blood, full of urine, undigested food. It's kind of a mess. You're mindful when you're here. This is all body-oriented stuff. Then it takes us to the feelings. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And then it takes us to the mind, qualities of the mind. Is it clear? Is it expansive? Is it constricted? Qualities of the space that opens up. It feels like space. And then qualities of what are called the dharmas, which are fabrications. So like the Four Noble Truths is the dharma. The hindrances, greed, anger, sloth and torpor, things that kind of obstruct our practice. These are all dharmas. So it looks at the world in these four categories. And the Anapanasati Sutta maps the four tetrads to these four categories. So they overlap. In this way, I've just deconstructed this in both of these, the Anapanasati provides us a framework for practice. The framework is, let's first of all look at the body, this physical thing. Let's know the body and let's calm the body. Then let's look at our feelings, the feeling tones. What happens when we first come into contact with anything? It feels pleasant, it feels unpleasant. When the breath slides in our lungs, pleasant. When something happens we don't like, it tightens and that's unpleasant. It's unpleasant breath as well. Until we go, take a long, deep, slow breath. That's pleasant and that calms us. All right, so explore the feeling tones. Come to know these and then calm these. And then the next element of this framework is the mind. Experiencing and calming the mind itself, which is where all of this happens. We've got the body, but we know the body most of the time by how we engage with it with our minds, right? That's just how we work. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's how we work. So then we move on body, feelings, mind, and then these dharmas. Provides us a framework, and the framework is working with these elements in this way. The body is the grossest, so we work there first. Feelings are next. The mind is next, so we're working with increasing levels of subtlety. Provides us with motivation. This Anapanasati Sutta, this Anapanasati practice, if well practiced, is of great fruit and benefit. What it says. Great fruit and benefit. Wake up! Right now, wake up. Complete freedom. That's the fruit, that's the benefit. And you see, if you're at the time of the Buddha, you see these arhats popping up like popcorn. Bunch of these wide awake people floating around. And you can feel that. You know these are totally relaxed, totally at peace. And boy, that's got to be great. Boy, I'd like to be like that. So there's your motivation. So you've got the framework for practice, you've got the motivation, and then you've got these steps, these 16 steps to work through. Another way of looking at those 4 tetrads, if you familiar with Buddhist teachings, you're familiar with the 5 skandhas? No. So the Buddha, in many places in the Pali Canon, it's like one of the structural teachings in the Pali Canon, in the whole of Buddhism actually, is to say this thing here, the sack of skin and bones, it's just it's just lumps of stuff. Right? There's form, there's just the physical thing, there's the body, there's the fingers and the bones and just physical stuff. And then there's this quality of the feelings. Does it feel pleasant? Does it feel unpleasant? Pleasant is, I want more of that. Unpleasant, take that away. That's where these shift into stronger levels of engagement. It's no longer just noticing the quality. It's, I want more, I want to take it away. But that first experience of pleasant or unpleasant is the feeling. So this thing I call a me is just this assemblage of the physical thing. These qualities are pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Then the perceptions that I build out of those qualities. This unpleasant, oh, it's got a particular edge to that. I think that's anger. Well, this has a particular edge. I think that's pain. We're going to call that pain. So these unpleasant experiences, we start categorizing and we label them, we build on top of them to make more out of them, to make things out of them. It's just a pile of stuff. There's nothing real there. That's what we were experiencing in this guided meditation. This pleasant feeling tone. You can't hold on to it. It's like smoke. If you're sitting there and you've got a pain in your legs, you can't hold on to that either. Next time you're sitting and you get a pain in your legs, pause before you do anything. What color is it? What shape is it? Where are the edges? Can't actually find the edges. Doesn't have solid edges. And it shifts in space. Qualitatively, it shifts. And if you relax, and it's not too bad, you can get to where it's an experience and not a pain. If it rises, you think that's pain. Once you've labeled it pain, you're lost. But if it arises before you label it, just notice it and relax. At that point, it's not yet pain. So what is it? Because in a minute, it's going to be pain. So this is another pile of stuff, these perceptions. And then the next thing is it's called different things in different places, actually, volition or fabrications. But there's this idea of um, that's a cushion and that's a mat and that's a bell and that's a microphone and that's a finger and that's a Katie. This is the Gareth. And I had a good meal for dinner. And then I'm going to go home to my wife and dogs. These are all assemblages of stuff that we label. And then the fifth is consciousness. Consciousness is what happens when one of our senses, our sense faculties, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. In Buddhism, there's 6 sense faculties, the 5 physical ones in the mind. When one of those 6 sense faculties encounters the object of the sense, this cognitive moment arises, this moment of sense consciousness. So eye consciousness, vision, happens when my eye encounters an object of the eye. There's this thing we call consciousness that arises. So this thing I call a me is simply made up of these 5 aggregates. It's this me. And the aggregates, it's kind of an unfortunate translation because the Buddhist texts were coming to the West in the 19th century, late industrial, well, we maybe still in the industrial age, but when the industrial age was really getting quite robust, and it had really taken root. And this is a kind of industrial term, the aggregates. It's just a heap. The Pali word and the Sanskrit word khanda and skanda, they have a sense of trunks or piles or mounds. Just think of them as 5 heaps of stuff. And the idea is, these are like, they don't even necessarily talk to each other. These are just things. And I glom together a me out of them all. So those are the 5 aggregates. So the 4 steps of the Anapanasati are basically working through these heaps. First one is the body, which is this form, skanda. The second is the feelings. The third is the mind, which is the perceptions and the fabrications or intentions, right? So we're just working through this framework, using the same frameworks. This idea of a framework to work in is really important. And it's a big shift because our normal frame of reference, in this world we live in today, is a framework of subjectivity and objectivity. It's a me and a you. That's how we relate to the world. The scientific framework is extremely objective. The very nature of science as we've created it is we put this thing out there so we can all look at it and have the same experience. It's how we design science, how we make it testable, and how the whole thing works. So it's founded on this idea of subject and object. That's a normal frame of reference. And we overlay that with capitalism, consumerism. If I satisfy my needs, my cravings, I'll be happy. If I have more money, I'll be happy. More stuff, I'll be happy. Go to work 9 to 5, 8 to 6, 7 to 7, however long they're making people work these days. This is a normal frame of reference. And Buddha's saying, we're not using that one. Put that down. We're going to use this frame of reference, shift your frame of reference and work within this frame of reference. So that shift of frame of reference is really important. And we talked about motivation and instructions. So these 16 steps I talked through the first 8. The next 4, they're oriented around the mind. And they're basically about gladdening the mind and then concentrating the mind. And I'll talk about concentration in a minute. And then liberating the mind, releasing the mind. That's the arc that they take us through, which is the same arc as we went through for the first 2 tetrads. It's an arc that ends up with the calming, which with the mind is release. And at the beginning, it's this encountering, familiarizing, and bringing pleasure to, which facilitates concentration in a way I'll talk about. The last of the tetrads, actually, I'll talk about that now because then I can talk about the last one. So what you experienced as you were going through this guided meditation, I hope, is concentration just naturally arising. And you were helped because I kept on like tossing little things out there. Stay on the breath. If you're wandering off, come back, which helps you stay on the breath. What our minds normally do, is they're scattered. Can you remember being present with your driving the whole of the way here? No. Oh, damn it, I forgot to. Oh, and I've got to remember to. What is that song that keeps going around in my head? My mind's scattered. If you settle and you bring one object in front of the mind and you keep the mind on that object and you allow everything to settle. So the meditation posture is one where you're gently cutting off external distractions. So you've come into a quiet place. Less noise, less bright lights, less things to distract you. You're sitting still. Less physical distractions. And if you get an itch, you've decided not to scratch. Guess what? After a while, it goes away. So we're moving into kind of sensory deprivation, which is conducive to greater concentration, less distraction. And then you place the mind on your breath. It has to be placed on something that fits with the quality of the mind at that point. If your mind's really agitated, it needs a little more than the breath, maybe counting the breath, maybe walking meditation, maybe some lines, some metta verses to recite. It needs a little more. But for right now, we just landed on the breath, and hopefully with some guiding that allowed us to stay there. As we stay with that, this scattered mind starts to become more concentrated. So we get these threads. So maybe it stays with the breath for 5 breaths, and then it's, oh no, I forgot. And then it's 10 breaths, and then it's 20 breaths. So this mind is becoming more concentrated. These threads of concentration become stronger and longer. There's still subject and object in this, though. There's still a me watching the breath. As our concentration becomes stronger, naturally the two just merge. Did any of you have this experience of a unified mind where there's no separation between you and your breath and no separation between you and your feelings? Yeah, good. Some yes, some no. Good. Because that's a sign of concentration strengthening. This unification, this loss of the separation between subject and object. So that's what's expressly identified in the third tetrad on mind, but it's also there when you work through the others and you go through this calming. This calming naturally brings concentration to bear. So then, with this more concentrated mind, hopefully with a unified mind, we move into the fourth tetrad. And what's going on in the fourth tetrad? What the fourth tetrad is about is really seeing emptiness, seeing impermanence, not emptiness, really seeing impermanence, understanding impermanence, and naturally engaging in the consequences of impermanence. So this impermanence, nothing's fixed. Everything is actually ungraspable. Everything. That cushion I mentioned, that's ungraspable. It's got kapok inside it, which is a seed pod. Take that thread outside, it'll be bird nest by the end of the year. All of it will just be taken by animals and used. That fabric, it'll disappear. We'll use these for several years, but at some point, this is all going to disappear. And the cushion, it came from seed pods. The material, I don't know where the seed material came from, but it's a mixture of natural fibers and plastics, I'm sure, which came from plants and from oil. People drilling holes in the plant ground, people cutting down plants, processed it all, distribution. And the sun and the whole universe is involved in the plants. And the oil products, they're fossils, also the sun, water, rain. The whole universe is right there. Totally impermanent, ungraspable, really. So the natural consequences of impermanence, when we truly understand this, there is nothing to hold on to. We recognize that. We recognize the suffering that's caused by trying to, and we just naturally start letting go. Naturally don't hold on to this. So this release, this letting go, includes a letting go of everything I think of as a me. Because what I think of as a me really is stuff. There is no me if I'm not holding on to anything. That's the 5 aggregates, holding on to these. The 5 aggregates aren't a problem. There's no problem with form, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. It's just stuff. The problem is when I think that's a me and I hold on to it all. That holding on to something that can't be held on to is what causes the suffering. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about a couple of things before I finish. I'm going to talk more. We're going to explore next week the second 2 tetrads a little more. And we're going to explore some of the work we do around as we engage in this practice. I want to draw a few lessons out before we finish here. The first is the balance between two words that you may or may not have heard, shamatha and vipassana. So those are Pali words. They mean calming and insight. So calming is what we experience when we settle, we calm, the breathing slows, the body relaxes. That's calming. Feels great. So you sit, you relax, calm, feels great. And then you get up, get in the car, somebody cuts you off, you tighten up again. You've learned nothing because the practice wasn't about learning anything. The practice was about experiencing calm. And it's great. It's like going to the beach. Really pleasant. But doesn't do anything in the outside world. Vipassana is insight, which is actually understanding how things work. So seeing the impermanence of our feelings, the impermanence of pain in our legs. These are real lessons. It means next time you're sitting in the car and your leg feels tight on the brake or the accelerator, it's like, it's no big deal. Don't have to do anything about that. In fact, I'm just going to relax. Next time you're outside and somebody cuts you off and you start to feel anger rising, it's like, I don't have to go there. This is just one of those things we were talking about. This is just perception and fabrication happening. I don't have to let that keep going. I don't have to hold on to that. Impermanent, don't you know? Let that go. So insight is a lesson that we take into the world with us. These two work together. You've got to be calm in order to calm in order for this concentration to rise so that the insights can emerge. And then you can learn and function in the world with those. And the quality of those insights, oh, that leg pain, that's just silly. If I relax before I start labeling it pain, I can sit with it for a while. That's cool. I can sit with it for longer. That's even cooler. Right? So calming becomes more robust. Insight allows calming to become more robust. So these two work together. And what you experienced here was in the guided meditation and in the way this sutta works, it's designed for these two to work together. So the core of this breathing meditation, you all know this from, your mothers, your teachers. Just breathe. It's no big deal. Just breathe. Take a couple of deep breaths. We all know this from when we were kids. Our breath is great at calming us. But the very nature of our breath is impermanent, is insubstantial, is ungraspable. And so we can turn and examine the tool we are using to calm ourselves and use that very tool to cultivate insight. And we can use that tool to cultivate insight elsewhere. So these practices work together. We experienced it in this guided meditation, and it's riddled through this Anapanasati Sutta. Another lesson is stay on the breath. Kept on coming back to this. Stay on the breath. Oh, that's a nice feeling. Is that a bird? No. Yes. It's a robin, I think. Off we go. That's not a way. Oops. That's not a way to do a practice, because that's conducive to wandering mind. It's conducive to losing concentration. We need to stay focused. So stay on the breath. You've got to have this single object of mind, single object of concentration. And if you find yourself wandering off, come back. There are a lot of different methods, a lot of different objects of meditation, so you can engage in different practices, but you always need a method. You always need this object, and you always need to come back to the object. Always need to come back to the method. And the last one I'll do for tonight, which fits with this, which really comes out of this idea of calming and insight. So you calm, cultivate insight, and ultimately the insight you are deriving is everything other than the awakened mind itself, other than the birthless or the deathless, being completely awake. Everything is fabricated. Everything is constructed. Everything is an object that our mind makes up. There is nothing that's graspable. There is no thing that is really a thing. I don't ask you to take that on faith. I tell you categorically, it is true. I don't ask you to take that on faith. I invite you to engage in this practice and learn that for yourself. As the word Buddha used, ehipassiko, which is Pali. Come and see. Try it for yourself. But if you settle into practice, settle into this meditation, and you bring up your breath, you bring up the most subtle things, the things that seem most solid, most real, ultimately you will find they are not. But just that lesson that when you settle in and you start really looking at the breath, there's nothing there to hold on to. We think our breath is so real. So real. There's just nothing there to hold on to at all. And everything about it is a story. Everything about it is something that a bunch of ideas we're creating. So this is a lesson we then take, and this greater level of looseness is something that opens up the world for us. Okay, so I think that's enough of me talking for tonight. We're about 10 minutes late 10 minutes left for discussion. So let me stop recording here.